Hello, my name is Nick Ward, and this is my TED Talk speech in which I'll be giving a mini sermon type message. Here is my audience. 1, 2, and 3. I want to invite my friend Kelsey over here. This is part of my audience participation / prop, so she's going to be taking this lollipop and eating it throughout the message. You can go ahead back to the audience. I'll explain the purpose of that in just a little bit, but if you have a Bible, would you turn it with me to Genesis chapter 32? I want to talk to you today on the subject of persistency and how when we're persistent with God in our life, we can see God move in marvelous ways. And the title of my message today is going to be The Power of Persistency. And now I'll begin reading in the 22nd verse. During the night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 servant wives, and his 11 sons, and crossed the Jabbok River with them. After taking them to the other side, he sent over all his possessions. This left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. When the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of his socket. Then the man said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." "What is your name?" the man asked. He replied, "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob," the man told him. "From now on you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and man and won." "Please tell me your name," Jacob said. Why do you want to know my name?" the man replied, and then he blessed Jacob right there. Moving on. I don't know about you guys, but when I was growing up, there were certain things that I went to my mom for and certain things that I went to my dad for. You see, I was smarter than your average 10-year-old, and I knew how to work my way around my parents saying no. Because there were certain things that I could get away with if I asked my dad, and there were certain things I could get away with if I asked my mom. My mom was usually more lenient when it came to getting in trouble. And if I did something bad at school, I would make sure my mom was the first one to find out, because then she wouldn't punish me as harshly as my dad would, and she would kind of tone my dad down a little bit. But, and usually if she did punish me, it wouldn't even last, because she'd let up in 3 days, because, come on, he would keep his cute face grounded, right? But my dad, on the other hand, was more lenient about letting me do things, but more stricter about me getting in trouble. For instance, I remember one time me and my buddy used to ride our bikes all over the place, and one Saturday night, my mom was out with her sister, and it was just me and my dad home and my friend. And for the longest time, I'd been begging my parents to let me ride my bike with my friend down to the McDonald's a few blocks away. And since my dad was the only one around to ask, it wasn't long before my friend and I were cruising our way down the street to suck down some cheeseburgers and fries. He even gave me money to buy food. I was honestly really good at this tactic and got away with a lot of things, but there was one time where my luck sort of ran out. You ever ask one of your parents something like, "Mom, can I do this?" And she's like, "Ask your father." I hate that. It's like the ultimate Uno reverse card for parents. I remember one time I really wanted to go over to my friend's house to play video games, but my parents weren't dumb, okay? They knew that the game was rated T for teens. My parents weren't even that strict, but when it came to video games, for some reason, they were on lockdown. Those Pokemon were demons for sure, and they just weren't letting it happen. But I knew my dad was more lenient with letting me do things, so I went up to him and I was like, "Hey Dad, can I go play video games at my friend's house?" And he hit me with it. He's like, "Ask your mother." And so even though I knew my mom would 100% say no, I asked, and of course she said no. But it was only June, and it was the summertime. So I had all summer to convince them to let me go play this game. So I kept bugging them every single day, and finally one day I lied, and I said we were going swimming, but in reality I went over to my friend's house and played video games. Better to ask for forgiveness than permission, right? Now, I'm not saying that this is how we are to be with God, obviously, but I am saying that there's something to be noted about persistency in our lives. It seems as if God blesses us when we constantly choose to put our faith, our time, and our energy and our actions in Him. This is exactly what we see in the passage of Scripture where Jacob wrestles with God. We're going to break this down more here in a second, but what I want you to see is that he stayed persistent and didn't give up and was blessed by God. This leads me to my main point today, which is persistency with God shows Him that we have enough faith to continually choose Him even when we don't get the response we want instantly. I want to go into 3 things I think persistency does in our lives. So if you're taking notes, the first one is when we're persistent with God, walls become speed bumps. I want to look back at this passage starting in verse 25. It says, "When the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of his socket." This is pretty major in a wrestling match. Jacob is literally wrestling with God, and now he's trying to do it with an out-of-joint hip. For my friends here, they'll get this reference. It's like tying Josh Spur's hands and feet together and making him wrestle John. It's not a good combination. But I want to point out what it says in verse 26. It says, "Then the man said, 'Let me go, for the dawn is breaking.' But Jacob said, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me.'" It's now daytime, and Jacob has been wrestling with this dude all night with an out-of-socket hip. But he stayed persistent, and the man eventually stopped. See, what I want you to get here is not that walls are going to ever leave us, and not that they're never going to ever come our way again. But when we don't get up and we put our faith in God and we're persistent and trust that he's going to provide for us even when it looks tough, that wall is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until it's just a little speed bump in the road. Sorry. The second thing that happens when we're persistent with God is our prayers get answered. You don't have to turn with me, but I want to look at Luke chapter 18, verses 4 through 7. Jesus is teaching a parable about the persistent widow, and that she keeps asking a hard-hearted judge for justice. And it says, "For a while he refused, but afterward he said to himself, 'Although I neither fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will give her justice, so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming.' And the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge says. And will not God give justice to his elect who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long over them?" These verses really say it all. How much more willing is our gracious God to answer our prayers when we're persistent in asking him for them? Persistency shows God that we have the faith in him to trust that he will answer our prayers. The third thing that happens when we're persistent with God is we get a new name. When the man had stopped wrestling with Jacob because he saw that he couldn't beat him, he said in verse 28, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob." The man told him, "From now on you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and with men and have won." In the Bible, God changes people's names to mark an encounter with him, so that they are forever changed. They're forever a new person. This happened to Paul as well, before he was Saul, and then he had an encounter with Jesus, and he was never the same after that, and so his name was eventually changed to Paul. Now I'm going to go ahead and call my friend Kelsey back up with the Tootsie Pop to end it out here. Now I want you to notice something. Notice how she's been eating it this entire time, and now we're able to see that she's starting to get to the Tootsie Roll center of the Tootsie Pop. Now, it took time and persistency to get to the center and to get to the blessing that God had waiting for you. You can go ahead and sit back down. You're good. Thank you. Now, she could have just bit into the Tootsie Pop and gotten to the center really, really quick, but then she would have missed out on all God had for her along the way. I mean, the best part of the Tootsie Pop, in my opinion, is the lollipop anyways. You know what I'm saying? But I want to point out a couple things about this. Even though she could have just bit into the lollipop and gotten to it immediately, she would have missed out on the enjoyment and all that God had for her along the way to get to the blessing. Well, another thing I want to point out is that the blessing was there the entire time. Oftentimes, God will have the blessings in store for us, and it's not something that we necessarily earn. It's just something that he wants to build our trust with. It's going to be there the entire time, but we have to continually, persistently choose God and choose to have faith in him, and he will eventually show us the blessing that's been there the entire time. Maybe there's something you stopped praying for a long time ago and start praying for it again. I feel like someone in here today has to keep giving God the chance in your life. Whatever it is, I can encourage you to be persistent and not to give up. That God is waiting for you to show him that you trust him enough to keep going and to keep trusting him. Thank you very much. This is my TED Talk speech.